Hi there, this is Color for Digital Design, and this is part 2 of Unit 11. We're continuing our discussion of digital color correction. So now we know that we can adjust images using levels, and we can adjust images using curves. So what is color balance all about? Color balance is used to correct subtle color shifts. So if you have skin tones, say in a portrait shot, that are skewing a little too yellow, you can correct it with a color balance. What you're doing in color balancing is adjusting the proportions of RGB or CMYK, and you always want to adjust the midtones first and then address the shadows and highlights. So let's look at how you can do that. You go to Adjustments, which is under Image, and then select color balance, and this window opens up. And notice on the right hand side you have red, green, and blue. On the left side you have cyan, magenta, yellow, and you have shadows, midtones, and highlights. So in the additive system, remember that red's complement is cyan. If you are adjusting to increase the amount of red, that also means you are removing cyan. You can consider each of these sliders to refer to 100% of the color within each channel. So magenta is the secondary to the green primary in the additive system, and blue is the primary and its additive complement is yellow. So again, if I'm adjusting to add blue, I am decreasing yellow. If I'm moving toward yellow, I'm increasing yellow but decreasing blue. It's an inverted or an inverse relationship. And obviously, as you note the sliders here, each one of these color levels is showing its percentage, positive or negative, and then here's yellows over here on the right. So again, when you're dealing with color balance, you want to pick the midtones first and say, I want to maybe pop a little more blueness into the sky and the mountains. So I can adjust that more towards cyan, which means I'm losing red. And if I do this, moving toward blue, it takes away the yellow out of the sky, and we get into blue-violet. And it also affects all the midtones everywhere else. Let's take that back to 0, and this back to 0. Now if I do that in the shadows and say I want to go much cooler in the shadows, and then say in the highlights I want to pop some warmth. There's a lot of highlight in this image. There's a lot of lighter values. Another kind of color adjustment is to use the properties of saturation, and Photoshop separates vibrance from saturation in terms of how you can adjust color. The difference between vibrance and saturation is based on what colors you're adjusting. So vibrance is used to adjust anything that's more neutralized. So the chromatic neutrals and the true neutrals. The brighter colors in the image won't be affected by the vibrance adjustment. Saturation, on the other hand, takes the entire image and modifies the brightness. You can understand that saturation is something that can be very easily overdone. When you're working with portraiture, use vibrance over saturation. In other words, that will be your first stop to adjust skin tones and the chromatic neutrals. And always be careful when you are adjusting saturation, because you can easily oversaturate everything in an image and it starts looking garish. That can cause colors to go out of gamut. It can result in a loss of detail. You'll lose depth in an image because the value will be affected. So just keep this in mind. Anytime you adjust images, you're adjusting on the basis of hue or saturation or value, which are, of course, the three properties of subtractive color, but relate inversely to the three properties of additive color, which are hue, saturation, and luminance. So let's look at the difference between saturation and vibrance. Adjusting groups of images can be done quickly and easily using lookup tables. If all the images are meant to have a particular color cast or color grading to them, you can accomplish that through lookup tables. A color lookup table is a set of information, and we use it to adjust all the colors in an image. So everything shifts toward the lookup table that's been invoked. As I said, we can use it to quickly color grade an image or a video, and often we do it to set a certain mood or ambiance. The reason why using a lookup table is preferred to creating actions is, first of all, you can apply it to more than one image at a time, and using the lookup table doesn't destroy the image quality. It's less complex than using actions, and so it's more convenient and will actually streamline your workflow. It takes a set of color, and then when you load the table, it adjusts all the colors in an image into that lookup table. So you can see that we go from fairly vibrant colors to fairly muted colors. You can use preloaded lookup tables. You can create your own. You can purchase lookup tables. So we'll just go here again, color lookup. And we will select so that affects the entire image. So instead of going to image adjustments and then picking your color lookup table, let's do an adjustment layer. So there's our adjustment layers, and I'm going to go to color lookup. So now I have it in an adjustment layer so that the original is not going to be affected. Everything's going to happen in the new layer sitting on top of it. So if I want to go with beach bypass, I can do that. And then by adjusting the opacity, I have a lot more control over the effect of the lookup table in the image. And I can also go with the various types of layer characteristics, along with the layer opacity adjustment. To make your own lookup table, you need to have a locked background layer. You need to have one or more adjustment layers without any masks, and you do need to be in the RGB color mode. So notice I have a background layer that's locked, and I have an adjustment layer created from clicking on this button and then picking which adjustment layer I wanted. And I've adjusted the vibrance a little bit. And now I'm going to go export a lookup table. So we go to export, not save, color lookup tables. And I'm just going to give it you can actually copyright your own lookup tables and license them. And I want high quality, and we'll export it in all of these formats. And then I'm going to hit OK. So that means lookup table. And so I'm going to put it here in my horses photo file. So to apply the color lookup table that I just created to this image of the Grand Canyon, what I'm going to do is click on the background layer, go to adjustment layers, and I'm going to pick color lookup, and there's my adjustment layer. And then I'm going to load a new LUT. And I'm going to load the cube. And so now you see that that lookup table has been applied and the image has drastically changed from warm to cool. And then of course I can adjust the opacity or the layer type, or both. Color grading is another approach to shifting colors within an image for mood or to enhance what you're trying to communicate with them. There are a number of different ways to use color grading. One of them obviously is lookup tables that we've just discussed. But let's look at another fairly simple way to color grade using color fill layers. So I've got this image of the Grand Canyon, and I believe I shot this on an iPhone, but it's looking a little bland and washed out. What I'd like to do is apply some color grading using color overlays. And so what I'm going to do is go to Adjustment Layer and Solid Color, and I'm going to pick the color that I'm interested in adding in. And I'm going to go to, say, Soft Light. And we can see that that is now affecting the entire image, but I only want to affect the shadow areas or the darker tones. So if I just want that violet in the shadows, I'm going to go to Blending Options, and I'm going to be moving the underlying layer. Because I've got two layers, I've got the top layer and the underlying layer. This layer refers to the top layer. I want to adjust the shadow color in the underlying layer, and so that's exactly what I'm doing now. You can see things are going violet and red violet in the darker tones. And then I can adjust the opacity. But another thing I can do is on a Mac, option click and add additional sliders to even out those tonalities. So they don't look so harsh. So since I have blend if gray, it's taking everything that is a fairly gray color or neutralized color within those shadow areas and altering them or remapping them into the violet and the red violet from the adjustment layer. So you see we've got a lot more color going on there now. Go back to background and do a new solid color. And what I'm going to do here is take it into warmth. And again, we can do soft light. And then what I want to do here with the blending options is deal with the lighter colors. So I'm going to pull this on the underlying layer here all the way over. And again, option click, to make some adjustments in terms of how those warmer colors are going to be, how harsh their edges are going to be. And we'll just click OK. So now Let's just go to the original image. First, the violet adjustment layer is dealing with the shadows, and the yellow-orange is dealing with the highlights. And there you go. So that gets us some of our, using the curves layer right there, brought back some of the detail. If you look up here in the rocks and I hide the curves layer, it gets flat very quickly. So this is how you color grade using color fill adjustment layers. Now if you wanted to save this as a lookup table, all you have to do is go to File, Export to Color Lookup Tables, and then you just follow through.